Hi, I'm Tom Lloyd Butler, and I am here on Rancho Santa Clara del Norte, which is a ranch belonging to my family. I'm a seventh generation Californian, and my family have been farming in Santa Barbara and Ventura County since about 1790, when the first ancestor came. This ranch came into our family in about 1860 after it was a Mexican land grant to a family called the Sanchez family in 1837. And my family has been farming it ever since. All of us are involved in pretty much every aspect of what goes on here, from growing the fruit to helping run other parts of the business and so forth. We've tried to instill a set of core values that extend from those of us who manage the property to everybody who labors at the property. And those values include a nod and an understanding of the history of our property and the people who've come here before us. Those values also encourage a great deal of curiosity to ask questions about how we're growing the fruit. And finally, creativity in terms of developing new ideas and new ways to grow the fruit and to make it more nutritious for our clients, for our families, and so forth. The importance of that is that every level of every person who's involved in cultivating these avocados in California really need to and do accept those three core values. That means that those of us who help with the bookkeeping in the office really understand how the fruit is grown and ask questions about how it might be grown, whether or not they observe an excess application of inputs that perhaps has cost too much money. We empower our foreman, particularly Arturo Romo, who's been here for 43 or 44 years, with the ability to question a cultural practice or to modify a cultural practice based upon what he's seeing in the groves. Because we know that he knows about how to grow an avocado in California. I think that we also try to be as creative as possible and to encourage creativity when it comes to new ideas of how we're growing the fruit and how we can grow it in a more nutritious way and in a way that is perhaps more economical in the use of inputs. And in this case, we've come up with new ideas to generate, to grow our fruit in a regenerative way that uses fewer inputs, and this is something which all of our staff, particularly Arturo and some of the others, are really buying into. We try to grow as nutritious of a fruit of a California avocado as possible. The second thing that we do is we try to grow the fruit in a way which is as regenerative as possible, in that we are working with nature rather than against nature. And by doing so, we are able to utilize fewer inputs, even water, and we can get into how that works in a minute. And then the third thing that we try to do is to farm in a way where we can actually help the environment by sequestering carbon. And one of the things that farmers can do more efficiently than any other industry is to sequester carbon by doing simple things that don't cost anything, like not tilling your soil, planting cover crops, and mulching. And if farmers are able to raise the carbon content of their soil by 1%, from say 1% to 2%, farmers around the world can effectively solve the carbon crisis by putting a teraton of carbon into the ground. We alone on this ranch, just by not tilling 20 acres of gardens and grounds, have made this ranch basically carbon neutral. So by doing simple, effective, and economical things like mulching your ground and not tilling your soil, farmers can really do a lot to help the environment. A third element of what we do that I would characterize as a regenerative farming practice is to use stumperies and decaying matters in our orchard. As it turns out, we know now through the work of Melvin Sheldrake in London, or in England, that the mycorrhizal network underneath the soil is as important as the nutrients that we have on the top of the soil. And the mycorrhizal network is an important component because a healthy network can then help the trees thrive. And here's what happens. There's lots of big macronutrients in the ground, N, P, and K. But there's also hundreds of micronutrients that the trees need to thrive and to produce a more nutritious and healthy crop. These micronutrients are difficult for the trees to take up by themselves. But the fungal networks, the mycorrhizal fungi, have a small surface area that enables them to take up the nutrients, the micronutrients, and then pass them on to the small roots of the trees, acting as kind of a conduit. And without a healthy mycorrhizal network, all you're going to get is the macronutrients in the tree, which does not produce a California avocado that is as healthy as one that has mycorrhizal networks producing and enabling the tree to take up the micronutrients. So this micronutrient structure, by virtue of the mycorrhizal networks, is a critically important element of getting a healthy and nutritious California avocado. And that's what we try to do with these gardens that we have. We can show you later, they're stumpery gardens that consists of large tree stumps that are gently decaying into the earth and providing a massive organic matter. These gardens, you'll see the inflorescences of over 11 or 12 different species of mushrooms. And mushroom is the inflorescence of the fungi beneath. So these networks are really critically important to producing a really, really healthy California avocado. One of the things that biodiversity does and why it matters is because a biodiverse environment, one consisting of lots of different species of plants, arthropods or insects, birds, small mammals, it provides a balanced population of animals that tend to kind of balance each other. And again, that means less interference from humans and greater working with nature, or greater working with nature in the process. A simple example, if you have a grove surrounded by a series of windrows, the windrows provide space for raptors, owls, hawks, and so forth. The raptors tend to eat the gophers. And that means you don't have to trap the gophers, or you don't have to poison the gophers, or you don't have to do the sorts of eradications that get involved when you have out of balance raptor populations. Another thing that we try to do is encourage native bee pollination. The University of California, through the University of California, a PhD doctor called Gordon Franke has documented that we have 126 species of native pollinators in our pasture land adjacent to our avocados. And what we do is we plant habitat gardens around the property that enable us to draw these bees into the avocado orchards. And we've documented over 55 species of native pollinators, which are now assisting the European honeybee in pollinating our orchards. And what's more is the fact that we believe the native pollinators actually do the pollination more deliberately and more efficiently than do the European honeybees, which tend to cross-pollinate. So we have greater pollination, and we have more efficient pollination from the native species that we have here on the ranch. Another thing we do is, a third thing we try to do is to try to encourage avian populations. We've found that in these habitat gardens or in our estate garden grounds, we've done informal bird surveys, and we're doing a more formal one now, that have revealed, in the case of the 3 zones that we've looked at, the most biodiverse zone is the garden, and that revealed about 21 different species in a 3-minute period. Monocultural agricultural zones, sort of like celery fields and so forth, have revealed 4 bird species in a 3-minute period. And what I'd call industrial ag zones, where you have polytunnels and so forth adjacent to the property, reveals 0 species. So the whole point of having a bird population is that you've got more biodiverse plant life that support more birds. And birds really do great things for the environment. They help pollinate, they can spread seeds, and they can also balance insect populations, as I mentioned, with the raptors. One of the values that I mentioned, in addition to creativity and curiosity, is the fact that we really value our past and those who came before us. And in that context, my father, I think, deserves a great deal of recognition for many of the things which he did. Toward the end of his life, he engaged with Dr. Gordon Franke to establish a bee pollinator program that enables us to pollinate our orchards with the help of 126 species of native bees that exist in our pastures. 50 of those are now pollinating our avocados, and we do believe that they do so in a more efficient and certainly cost-effective way because we don't have to rent them. Another thing which my father did was he was quite innovative in the way, in some of the ways in which he experimented with planting the trees from an architectural standpoint. He was among the first, together with Rob Brokaw, to experiment with the close planting of gems in a 6x16 format, which Rob takes credit for in Long Canyon. And I think that this particular format is interesting for a couple of reasons. First of all, it enables the pickers who really work in these fields to pick the fruit more easily. And the average age of our picking crew is probably close to 50, if not older. And so we have to be cognizant of the fact that these guys are aging, and it is hard work, and we need to do everything we possibly can to make it simple and as simple as possible. So planting the trees closely as if they were a hedge, keeping them low to the ground so they have to use very few ladders, is one of the benefits. Another benefit is the fact that in close plantings we found that they can share nutrients. And if you have a healthy mycorrhizal network under the ground, beneath them, that you're supporting through a variety of different means, which we do, the ability of these trees to share nutrients via the mycorrhizal network and via their own root systems is also of benefit. For example, we have learned that the close planting results in less water consumption, and reducing our water consumption from, say 2 acre feet to 1.7 acre feet in a watertight environment is something which is really meaningful if it doesn't contribute to producing a lower quality California avocado. I've mentioned a lot of different techniques and ideas that we have about the way we grow our fruit. But at the end of the day, we try to do it in a way which is simple and fun and kind of is consistent with the way nature would grow plants and encourage animal life. And at the end of the day, I think what we end up with is a California avocado that is nutritious and delicious and healthy because it has more nutrients in it than it would had we not done what we do. I think that we can grow this fruit in a more profitable way because with regenerative techniques like mulching and cover crops, we don't have to use as much fake nutrient as we otherwise might. Or we don't have to use as many other inputs, perhaps even water, as we otherwise might. And at the same time, I think that we have also done this in a way which is really supportive of the environment and of the climate, because we know that as farmers, we can sequester carbon more efficiently than any other industry. And by simply raising the carbon content of our soil and taking carbon out of the sky and putting it in the ground where it belongs, we are doing a huge part for the environment. So those three things, a product that's delicious and healthy, really wonderful California avocado, and doing it in a way which works with nature so that it's productive, and finally doing it in a way that supports the climate and the environment is what we're here for. The peak season for California avocados is from the spring through the summer. And we would encourage you, for all the reasons that we've talked about here, to buy the avocados that we produce in California.